Morning. Lovely yin practice this morning, yogis. So just choosing, as always, where you want to begin, either seated or lying down, whatever your body responds to today. I know I always offer that to you. It's because, sometimes if you do always start seated, you might think, actually, I think I welcome a little bit of a lie down this morning. So whatever your body wants to do. And if you have a bolster handy or maybe a stack of cushions or anything just to kind of create a little bit more support, we might use that today too. Let's just begin centering, grounding and rooting, and enjoying a few breaths into our body. Whatever you've been up to lately, if you've been busy or there's been a lot of chaos around you, then this is always a lovely safe space to find on your mat. Maybe you find that at the moment you get on your mat, there's just sort of that release of tension, muscle memory in a certain place. Just checking in now with how it feels to breathe. Tuning in to the way the breath comes down to the belly, moves up into our chest, without forcing it, just the gentle movement of your ribs. And awareness of any tightness that you're holding in the muscles through your back. Send your energy down into the earth, roots down. And a little something to read you. About pranayama. Just a lovely little few words. Just follow the breath. Learn it. Taste it. Feel it. Surrender to it. Let the breath be you. Feel yourself, the breath. Melt. Fuse. From the sleeping state to the waking state. Just a few little words that, when you connect them to the breath, pranayama, you can sort of really feel that melt into your breath. So if you're lying down, just hug your knees in, have a few moments to rock, and then just join me in seated. We'll take a nice meditation this morning. If you're seated already, just have a few moments to get comfortable. Adjust your posture if you need to. And we're going to simply just use the mantra So Hum, because it works so beautifully with breath and pranayama. So we will breathe in and say so, and we exhale and hum. It's very simple. The mind can sometimes drift off with this, but just every now and then, just try and come back. But don't berate yourself. Just allow it all, whether the mind wanders or not. And you'll soon come back to So Hum. I'll bring you back every now and then. And just sit with existing, with no agenda. So I'll pop the timer on for 5. Rest the hands. Relax your face, shoulders, body. And we'll begin. Just inhale, so. Exhale, hum. And you'll notice the sound of the breath sounds like this as well. With every out-breath, you can relax a bit more. Noticing the breath sounds like so hum. Just being. Staying with so hum. Just repeating the mantra one more time in your mind. And then we can just gently come back into the room, blinking our eyes open. How was that? Did you stay with it? Was the mind really active, going off in different directions? No judgment, just a pure observation on how the practice felt today. Because there'll be times when you hardly notice you've said the mantra and the mind will be off everywhere. We're going to start with Mantis. So a nice stretch forward. If you want a little cushion to put under the belly, then that can feel nice. Or if you need blankets behind the knees just to release the compression there. Otherwise, we'll come down into this nice stretch. Lovely for the arms and the upper back. But please know, if there's any aggravation with any of these poses today, just come out, lie in Shavasana. Deep sensation in the hip flexors. Lovely for liver and kidney meridians and your stomach. Can you relax around the shoulders, the upper back? And gradually softening into your face. Relaxing the elbows, forearms and wrists. And just keep checking if there's a little bit more you can relax in your upper back between the shoulders. Breathing deeply to your belly. And if there are any parts of your body that really need some healing today, take the breath there. With the intention of your mind, just breathe into these areas. Let the breath start to unblock and release any stagnant energy. In your mind's eye, you can imagine the breath perhaps just clearing through a blockage, allowing there to be a bit more free flow of energy. Notice how you feel around the neck. Whether this pose is getting a little bit easier, you're feeling the deeper stretch, especially through the legs. And then when you're ready, we'll take a nice breath and gently lift up. Lift the head slowly. And just walking the hands back to the body. So just over 4 minutes. That felt quite a long time today. It's really strange how poses can sometimes feel really short or really long in the same amount of time. Let's just come back. Rest in neutral pose. Feel all that lovely tingling over the tops of your feet and the shins, calves. where we've really compressed into that pose. And as you start to take a few breaths and just begin to let everything soften, it might take a few moments just to let the back adjust. Again, take the breath to the lower back there, if there's a tenderness there. And then when you feel ready, you can just let everything melt a little bit. That lovely quote that I often say from Bernie Clark is about, we don't use yoga to get into the pose, we use the pose to get into the body. And I think this time when we take in neutral after the pose is a beautiful reflection of what we've felt, not just physically. Maybe you're still feeling some tingliness, coolness around the legs. And then when you're ready, let's just bring the knees in, gentle hug. I'm going to come up into butterfly. And like last week, I'm going to show you sort of a few different ways that you can use the bolster with this. So you don't have to use a bolster because we can come into butterfly any way that we want to. But let me just show you. I'll turn sideways. If you have one, it's really nice maybe just to rest the head and get some relief there. Or we can just pop the bolster across our feet and allow the arms to just rest. And there's another way, a third way, which is a little bit even more restorative. Less of an impact around the hips and the inner thighs, but actually really lovely because the legs are lifted. It allows us to stretch a lot more into our lower back and it's really quite comfortable. So have a play with which position you'd like to come into, and you might start here and think, oh, actually this feels quite simple and easy, or I want a bit more of a stretch somewhere. So just move the bolster around should you want to. It can be done with cushions as well. If you've got, some cushions, or you could roll up a pillow as well. Don't feel you have to use the props because you may enjoy butterfly without anything. Whichever pose you've taken, just enjoy softening here. Focus the breath to the belly. Relax the shoulders and head and neck. And as you breathe into the belly, you can perhaps feel that breath move into the lower back as well. So with Mantis, our first pose, we had the knees wide, but in a totally different position. So just noticing how this compares. what you're feeling. Do you notice more of a sensation through the inner thighs, or perhaps more in the outer part of the body, in the hips? Every time you come into this pose, it will feel slightly different. How does it feel to breathe? Are you enjoying how the ribcage expands, contracts? Just being very peaceful with your thoughts. Where do you feel the breath really move in this pose? We'll just take 2 more breaths and just notice if there's anything else you can just let go in this last few moments. And then gently lifting up, and even as you just lift your head and your body up, noticing how it creates that lovely relief perhaps around the hips. Let's find neutral. Again, move slowly as you roll your back down, especially if you have a tenderness in the lower part, and just observing. Lovely deep inhale, sigh. And as we do that, everything just gives us that helping hand to relax. Take your time to let everything soften. You might still have a tightness in the belly where you're supporting the lower back still a little. And every breath, the out breath, is an opportunity just to release. Checking in with what you're feeling, perhaps a completely different sensation through the legs. Before there was maybe tingling on the tops of the legs and around the shins. It might be a lot more centered around the groin or hips, tops of the legs. So just noticing all the parts of the body that we're targeting today and noticing chi move. There was a comment in a program I was watching the other day about how somebody had read the same book about 25 times, and the other person was astonished as to how they could read the same book 25 times. But the highlight that he mentioned was that you're not the same person every time you read that book. And so the book is always going to be different in some small way. And I thought that was really quite intriguing, and linking that with our postures, the same posture, but It's so different, possibly, for you each time because you're different. There's another little nugget of yourself that you open up or is revealed to you. So let's hug in again. And we're going to come into owl today in a few different ways. We normally use a block, but as we have bolsters, if you do, then we can use that. So a few different ways. This is not my favourite pose because I can never get my feet flat down. So ideally, owl is where you have your feet flat and we can come like this, but this is never a steady pose for me. You can perhaps use a block on the low height or maybe on this one to sort of prop yourself on. However, if you have a bolster, I'm going to take this opportunity to sort of sink into this in a slightly different way. So I'm just going to sit on the end of it. And this does allow me to have my feet flat on the floor. It's not exactly the same position as owl because it's slightly leaning back, but it's a variation. So let's just sort of come into this pose and see how this feels with us today. If it doesn't suit you, and it may not suit many of you, lower back wires, whatever, then please come out. Just choose something that you prefer. But otherwise, we're going to sit here, enjoying kind of the length that it gives through our back. Closing our eyes. Noticing what we're feeling around the tops of the legs, our hip creases, those hip flexors. You won't hold this for too long, just exploring the different ways that props can help. And even in this pose, although it's not centered, it's centered more around the legs. We can feel this lovely stretch that we get through our wrists. Notice if you're tight in your belly and the muscles of the abdomen. And whether we can breathe and soften this area. And we're just going to take another breath or so and just do a couple of minutes in this one today because it's very intense. So let's just release hands. You can even just feel that gently in your wrists perhaps, and then pop whatever cushions or blocks you've used aside and find a nice neutral pose. There's a theme with quite a few of these poses today, and it is sort of this top of the legs, working around hips, very linked with our sacral energy. So depending on whether you used a block which has you a little bit more tilted forward with that pose, or whether you sat back onto the bolster, just checking in with how that feels, the after feelings. And that position is said to be very good for the digestive system. Obviously, a lot of people in the world will eliminate in that particular position, allowing everything to be more free-flowing rather than sort of kinked and resistant to. Deep breaths. And where are you most feeling the after effects? You might feel like you're feeling it a lot more kind of round the groin or perhaps hips still. So just tuning into the feelings that you get when chi moves. And let's just take one more breath. Bring your knees in, have a nice little rock and a roll, and we're going to come up into frog, but with a bolster to make it a little bit easier today, or whatever you've got, a stack of cushions that can support. I find frog quite an intense pose, often have to be in the mood for it, so just playing around with the bolster. If you've got something soft to put under your knees, because we do take the knees wide in this pose, we won't hold this one for too long either. But it makes it a little bit easier having the bolster, so sort of just bring it in line with the body, take the knees out, and they're often ideally in line with the hips, and then we can just bring the body down. Just going to slightly adjust here because just need some padding for the knee. If you can't get comfortable with your knees, this can be quite an uncomfortable pose, so really try and pad the knees out. Using the bolster allows you don't have to come down so much. You still feel a lovely stretch, but it's not so intense and possibly uncomfortable. So try and relax. You're going to feel a really deep stretch on that inner thigh. And as I always say, try and go just to sort of 70% of a stretch. Don't go full out where you're really pulling too much. And notice if your breath feels very tight and tense, whether you can breathe deeply to the abdomen. And we're just coming up to about 2 minutes, so take a nice breath, then we'll come out. I must say that often coming out and resting back after the pose can actually feel really quite lovely, even if the pose hasn't felt the most comfortable. So liver, kidneys, spleen channel, really balanced and encouraging sort of flow with that pose. And stomach. Take a few deep breaths, and again, just find where the chi's flowing. Notice if you particularly like relaxing after certain poses that might be a bit challenging. So we'll bring our knees in, have a lovely little rock. And if you really want to, rock a little higher on the spine, bring the head up, hug the knees in more. Okay, so we've done some quite intense ones to start with this morning. I'd like to just come into a few softer ones. So let's come into bench. Nice little cushion, or just a rolled blanket, and we'll come back. A bit more supportive, relaxing, and just placing that cushion a little bit further away from the body so we don't curve in the lumbar, it's more thoracic. One of my favourite ones, this one. If you need something underneath your neck, small cushion, rolled up towel can be supportive. If today it doesn't suit you, you can always have a little block behind your neck, which I'm going to take today. And if this is one that you like as well, just notice the feelings that you get in a pose that you enjoy, maybe over a pose that you would never normally choose yourself. What feelings come up? What's that inner dialogue that you're getting? Gentle breaths. It's easy to breathe here, perhaps. Lovely to explore how the breath moves in your body. There's an openness to this pose rather than being closed. It's interesting when you're in an easy pose or a comfortable pose, how your nervous system reacts, whether you're feeling really calm here and supported, whether some of the earlier poses, they weren't so calm, they were more challenging and disruptive perhaps in your mind. Maybe the thoughts were a bit turbulent. Resistant. Just enjoying how you feel your belly rise and fall. You can come back into the So Hum mantra in your mind if you wish. Notice if there's anything else you can relax, perhaps your fingers and thumbs, facial muscles, shoulders. And then we'll take a lovely breath and gently come up, just popping whatever props you've used to the side. The next pose, while you're lying down, I'd like you to think about it. I'm going to give you yogi's choice. The last pose that we will do will be waterfall. So just with that in mind, maybe you can think of another pose that your body might like to go into with our next pose. Just have a moment to lie down and just maybe let your body answer you. You might have to try out a few different positions first to think, oh, actually, I need this. Maybe it's a twist. Maybe, just a few minutes in each side. It could be banana, a forward fold or a backward fold. How does your spine feel like it needs to move? Anything stretching the arms? We have open wing and closed wing. Turtle, if you want to fold yourself into a little ball. Or we can come into happy baby, what we call hedgehog in yin. Just have a few moments to contemplate. Ask your body, what do you need? So let's bring our knees in. And you may have a pose in mind, you might still be thinking. Sometimes it's the hardest thing to decide, isn't it, when someone says, what do you want? What do you want to do? So with our last pose being waterfall, have a little think about where you want to be. Supported bridge could come into, or heart bench. Whatever pose you've taken, just tune into the breath. Relax anywhere that you notice that is tense. Check in through your face and neck. It might not even be a particularly yin pose. You might just want to move your body into a certain shape. Don't feel the need to stay there. Move into something else if you want to. Moving arms if you want to in a certain pose. Relaxing the belly and breath. And we'll take a couple of breaths, gently lifting out of whatever pose you've been in. Let's find neutral. Did your body like it? Did you choose the right pose just for you? Did you follow your intuition? Or did you feel you'd taken a pose that you ought to take and really wanted to change it to something else? So just observing the whole journey of deciding can be quite an interesting reflection. How does your body feel? Hopefully good. We'll just take a few more breaths here as we notice our flow, kind of within and outside the body. And then we'll come into waterfall. Hug the knees in if you want to. Have a moment. A couple of rocks. And then I always like to grab a cushion and then pop it just under the buttocks. And we'll just take a few moments in a gentle inversion. Relax. If your eyes are closed, you can just draw your awareness to your third eye, Ajna. Maybe see an indigo or a crystal colour here. And you can easily feel a nice open breath into belly and chest. Notice where you're still tense, perhaps wrists and hands, the forearms. Following your breath, just feeling peaceful. And then just dropping the feet down, bending knees. Just pull out the cushion. And relax. Trying to tune into all parts of your body. You can scan down head to toe. What do you feel? Where do you feel it? What's going on? And then gently, we're going to come into relaxation. So enjoy a nice little hug if you want to, and come to seated or remain lying down. Pop a blanket over you. There's still a little bit of a chill around, I think. Unless you've got your heating up. So just something maybe around your shoulders or across the body. And just getting comfortable either in your seated pose or lying down. I'm just going to let you have some time here to, without any agenda, no way of feeling or thinking, just sitting and being. Something that we don't often do. Sitting with this idea of where you are and just you existing. And let the mind wander with that thought. Just gently breathe into this. Thinking of all the wonderful ways why you exist. And really how wonderful you are, having this time on earth, connection with wonderful people, loved ones. Gently when you're ready, just returning back. Taking a few deep breaths. And noticing how that felt just to sit with yourself, Can you even remember the thoughts that you had, the flow of them? Whether it was a long thought that jumped or multiple, lots of different ones. Just observing yourself. So if you're lying down, just have a moment to stretch and hug in, have a little rock. If you're seated, again, just gentle movement. And I'd like for you to join me in seated. And there's something I'd just like to show you that I found from another yogi. It's a lovely and very interesting neck exercise. So just while we're still very peaceful, this is quite simple. So I'd like you just to turn your head to the right and just hold there for a moment and notice what movement, what flexibility you feel like you have here, and just sort of clock in your mind how far you've moved, and then just bring your head straight back round to the front. Bring your left arm in front of you and then the right arm on top, just like you're stacking your arms. And then we're going to move them to the left, so the opposite direction. So just keeping the chest forward, we're literally just going to move left and then forward, left, forward. Let's just do 2 more. And then gently come back to the front. Just release the arms down. And just again, take your head and turn it to the right. And just notice, has it moved further? If it has for you, it's quite magical, because it definitely has for me. It's marginal, but I can really notice it. So let's just come around to the front. And we'll do the same with the left. So just take a moment, look to your left, and just mentally remember how far you feel like you've moved your head. Come back to the front. And then we'll bring the right arm in front, the left over the top, and then we'll do the same. We'll do about 5. So moving, keeping the chest forward, just literally moving the arms to the side. We'll do a couple more. And then just release the arms down and turn the head to the left. It's considerable, isn't it? And then just come back round to the front. It's magic. Really, really notice how the head can move so much more. Just a lovely little thing that another yogi shared. So just bringing your hands to heart center. Om Shanti. Namaste.